One of the first kings to dominate the world, or not the first one, was a fellow by the name of Alexander the Great. I think that the Great was his own addition, symbol of his tremendous anivus. I think even on his social security card it said Alexander the Great. They also say that he had a t-shirt that said Alexander the Great. As a matter of fact, everybody in his kingdom had a t-shirt that said Alexander the Great. And a cap. And if you didn't wear the cap that said Alexander the Great, then you did not have a head afterwards to put a cap on. I guess that's how he was listed in the phone book, Alexander the Great. Or Alexander the Great at mightykings.org. Referring to the kings that he eliminated in the course of his life. The Gemara actually refers to him as Alexander Mugdin. And we recently in Daf Yomi learned the Gemara in Masechtas Tamid that he came to the Ziknei Hanegev. And we know that he had already an audience with Shimon HaTzadik up north, and that he got off his horse and bowed down to Shimon HaTzadik, which was not something Alexander was known to do. As a matter of fact, I think that was the first time that those back muscles were ever used in terms of him bowing down to anyone. And he said that Shimon HaTzadik, whenever he went into war, he saw the image of the Kohen Gadol, and he acquiesced to Shimon HaTzadik not to destroy the Beis HaMikdash, and the Jews gave him gifts in return, amongst them that every baby that was born that year was named Alexander. Although we did take out the great part, but that's where the name Sender Alexander comes, as we have discussed before. So the Gemara says that he asked the Ziknei Hanegev 10 questions. We won't go into all 10. We'll go into some of them. Clearly, Alexander was wanted, wherever he went. Everyone oohed and awed, and they fell to his feet, and they were overwhelmed by his majesty. And although the Yidden had shown him Kvoid Malchus, but they didn't godify him. In other words, it seemed that they still believed that, but you're a boss of Adam, and you need the Bori Olam to pump your heart like anyone else does. So he asked them a series of questions. Now, Alexander, in those days, you weren't only a great warrior, being that he was Greek, he was also a great philosopher, right? You couldn't just be a warrior, you had to be a philosopher warrior, which makes things worse. So they once read somebody a shidduch, and they told the girl that the boy is a great speaker, he's a great writer, he's not the smartest. So she said, great, so the whole world will know that he's not the smartest. The fact that he's a great writer, and we have a warrior and a philosopher, that's not so good. I don't know. I read in the Hamadiyah that they have a computer program now, they tested it, that a lady Nebuch that was paralyzed, that with her brain waves, it was able to read her brain waves, and the computer then, a robotic arm, lifted the coffee and brought it to her lips. I don't know, this sounds scary to me. You walk down the street, and if everybody, anyone you think of that you don't like, all of a sudden there's a hammer banging you on the head, sounds scary. Anyway, so Alexander, he asked the people, so I'm the great philosopher, right? I'm the great philosopher. And everyone knows he was a Talmud of Aristotle, and I don't know the whole Yichus, the dynasty of philosophers, but... So he asked them, Ezehu Chacham, who is the great and wise man? Alexander said to them. Another story, the boy went to see his almost Basherta the first time. He said, I'm so nervous, I don't know what to talk about. He said, you talk about common things that you may like, talk about family, philosophy, really, if you feel it's getting intense. So he's sitting there, and he's like sitting, he doesn't know what to say. He's trying to think, what they tell him. Things you like. He goes, you like spaghetti? She says, nope. Conversation over. He's thinking, what's the other thing to talk about? What's the other thing to talk about? I don't remember. Family. He goes, you have a brother? She says, nope. What's the other thing? Philosophy. Finally he says, you think if you had a brother he would like spaghetti? He says, how would you do? Alright, so Alexander is this great philosopher, and he says to the Jews, the Ziknei Negev, the elders of the Negev, he says, so Ezehu Chacham, who do you think is a wise man? So they tell him, Ezel Chacham Haroyes Anoiled, the one who sees what's going to be born. Now, who could see what's going to be born? So Pashtus, it means someone who has an ability, the foresight, to be able to put two and two together and to anticipate what's going to happen. But no one can really do that. Because the Lashon isn't just Ezel Chacham Haroya, what's going to pan out. It says Hanoiled, what's going to be born. So as some of the Mefarshim explain, he said to them, but no one knows what's going to be born. You want to tell me I can guess the play to market, I can guess where the dice is going to fall, but what's going to be born? How do I know that? They said, that's why you're not a Chacham. There's only one Bari Olam that's a Chacham. Ezel Chacham Arayas Hanoiled. The Bas Ayin explains the Gemara that Ezel Chacham Arayas Hanoiled means that when someone does tshuva, he gets a new neshama. This that it says in the Zohar that there are certain averos that tshuva doesn't help for, that's on your neshama. But a person can reach a certain level of tshuva where he gets a new neshama, mamash a new neshama. Ani hayom yiladaticha. So Ezel Chacham, a fool says, I did averos. No, it says beferish. Tshuva doesn't help on those averos. Chacham says royas anoiled. That's true. But if I do enough tshuva, I get a new neshama, and on the new neshama, it comes with a clean slate. Either way, they were trying to tell him, Harav Reb Alexander, I know you're mighty king, I know you conquered the entire world. But you see, nothing stays the same, right? And you have to understand two things. I say nothing stays the same. I say the story that there was a man that was walking and he was collecting a bunch of mice. He had 15 in his hand, he was looking for a 16th. I said, what are you doing? He said, apparently he had a rocky relationship with his landlord and he's moving out. And the landlord was very angry at him about alleged damages that took place to the apartment. He said, I am warning you. I better find that apartment exactly the way it was on the day that you took it. So he said, I'm missing one more mouse. Get it done. Okay, nothing stays the same. Nothing is exactly the way it was, and nothing is exactly the way it is. So they kind of told Alexander, Rav Reb Alexander, okay, there's no years, we're never going to give up, because Ezel Chacham Arayas Hanoiled, what doesn't exist today could exist tomorrow. And despite all of the power and all of the wealth, we know as much as anyone does that there are no guarantees. Sir Moses Montefiore, they say, went to sleep every night in a coffin to remind himself that even though he is one of the richest people in the world, he's not going to live forever, which could be why he lived a very long time with that type of an attitude. Okay, so he wasn't getting anywhere with his philosophy. So he said to them, well, Ezel Gibar, maybe you don't respect my philosophy, but you should respect my gvura. So what do you think? Ezel Gibar. So they told him, Ezel Gibar HaKovish es Yitzroi. As the Mefarshim explained, Ezel Gibar HaKovish es Yitzroi, his Yetzirah. Because a lot of people are very good at being Kovish somebody else's Yetzirah. Ezel Gibar HaKovish es Yitzroi. And there's also an understanding that, look, the Rebbeinu Shem knows my Yetzirah. Right? He knows how hard I try. And there is no one on this universe that can look at me and say, you're in the dumps, who are you, you're not. Only the Rebbeinu Shem knows my Yetzirah. More than anyone else. A fellow told me a story that he went to the communications director in his firm with his phone, and he said, I got to put a filter inside. So he said to him, why? It's going to slow down your access. This person is not from, but he's Jewish, the communications person. So he said, I'm sure you heard about the big Asifa. He says he read about it in the media. It was not necessarily very complimentary. So he said, I don't know what you read, but just let me explain to you. You know what it was? It was 40,000 people getting together saying, I want a certain amount of purity in my life. Okay? That we come from... I want to connect to the Avos. I want to connect to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. All right, he says it to them. He starts installing the filter. And he said, as he's working, on the table was a bacon and eggs sandwich. And he picks it up and says, well, I guess I should do mine. And he throws it in the garbage. So we don't know the effect that we have on others. And we don't know how things are chashiv to the Rabbi Shalom. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows every person and his nesyainais and what he knows. All right, so they're not impressed with Alexander's chachma. They're not impressed with his gvura. So how's about his ashiras? He's a pretty rich guy. Ezeu Asher. So again, they bop him on the head. They say, Ezeu Asher, hasameach b'chalkai. someone that's happy with his chelik. And apparently, Alexander, you are not happy with your chelik because you don't stop. You keep invading country after country. So anyone that keeps invading country after country is obviously not happy with what he has. So if you're not happy with what he has, what good is the money? I told you the story many times about a person in Germany when the stock market crashed a couple of years ago that lost, I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was something along these lines. He lost like $7 billion. That's billion, bays, like billion as in Bilkala, Barsh, Bundlach, billion. And so he committed suicide. How that helped him, I don't know. Did I mention that he lost 7 and he had 6 left? That he also mentioned he was 84 years old. So you're going to ask, so why did he commit suicide? As I've told you this, I think, many times. I think it comes along with this story. It's like connected to it already. That the basic saw when he was a young man, he was walking in Warsaw, and there was somebody about to jump off the roof. And he said, what's happening over here? He says, the guy's jumping off the roof. Mechel's jumping off the roof. They said, what did you tell him so far? He said, we told him, think about your wife. He said, that's why he's jumping off the roof. He said, let me talk to him. So he went over to him and said, Mechel. He says, Rebbe, I give up, I'm jumping. He says, Mechel, you could jump. What do you think, it's going to be better up there? You think you're not going to have to face your issues up there? He came down the stairs. Okay? So this guy committed suicide. So I'm trying to think, why would a guy's 84 years old, he has $6 billion left over. If he would go on some exotic cruise and eat sushi 24/7, he will never be able to consume all of the money that he used. So the Torah says he never had a red cent to his name. The only thing he had was the covet of having more than someone else. So if before the financial downturn he was, number 6 on the Forbes list, 10, all of a sudden now he's never down to number 12. There are 11 people in this universe that are richer than him, more rich than him. That's it, is Eis Mensch. Because he never had a penny. So at one point, Alexander, he asks the people, because he sees he's not getting the respect. Again, he's entitled to respect because he's the king. He's not being idolized. So he asked them, says the Gemara, Ma yaver inish v'yichya. What does a person have to do to live? He was kind of meramis them that, if you don't flatter me enough, this may be your last day on this planet. So they answered, my father used to learn this Gemara with me when I was a little boy. Ma yaver inish v'yichya. What does a person do to live? Yamas esatzma. He kills himself. Kills himself. What does that mean? So there's different shittas in the Rishonim. Some learn anova, means to be modest. Some say not to overeat. Some say it means take whatever business you can get, even though you say it doesn't pass. But the pashtus inyan is, we don't expect anything. We wake up in the morning and we say, Maidani, and we say, I am alive. Thank you, Hashem. I am alive. Like I told you many times, I met an elderly gentleman once, a great sense of humor. I said, how do you feel when you wake up in the morning? He said, surprised. We wake up in the morning, we're alive. We say, thank you to Hashem. I don't take anything for granted. If you don't take anything for granted, you're happy with everything. You're full of simcha. You're full of joy. I always tell my kids when we go on a trip, and the baby was in the back seat, crying and screaming. And he would say, I want apple juice. I want apple juice. There's no apple juice. You give him a milk bottle. I want apple juice. I want apple. There's no apple juice in the car now on the New York State freeway. There's no apple. I want apple juice. So you know what you do? You can tell him 1,000 times there's no apple juice. He keeps crying. You turn around. You take the bottle away from him. Give him back the milk bottle. He drinks it. He's happy. Right? So we needed a bunch of them to take the bottle away from us. Ma yaver inish v'yichya yamas esatzmai. And that's a certain mindset. So Alexander, you can't really kill us. Because as far as we're concerned, our lives are in the hands of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and you're a shliach like anyone else. Ma yaver inish v'yamus yichya. Believe the world is yours. You believe the world is yours. The Stiper once told the Bacher why he wasn't getting married yet. He said, I'm supposed to be the best Bacher in the yeshiva, and my shir, everyone else is married, not me. He said, I'll tell you why. He says, you believe that every girl in town wants to marry you. So it's very hard for you to take one girl and turn down all the girls in the town. He says, the other Bacher will say, who would want to marry me? He said, a girl wants to marry them. They're so happy. With your mindset, you're not going to get married. They say that Baal Shem Tov, the first time he met the Talmud Yaakov Yosef, so he was telling him about his Hashgacha Pratis, and he was telling him everything in this world is, we're nothing, and every move and every step. And one of the things that they had a discussion about, and suddenly an old man walked in, an old fixer person. He looked a little deranged, and he was holding a hammer, and he said to the Baal Shem Tov, "You have anything for me to repair?" So the Baal Shem Tov said, "No." So the man went ballistic, screaming, yelling, you do have to fix this. You just don't want to give me the job. He says, you have what to fix. You just don't want to think it. He's screaming and yelling. He walks out. The Baal Shem Tov takes out a tillin, and he goes to the corner, and he opens up his siddur. He starts crying his heart out. So the Taldas Yaakov Yosef says to the Baal Shem Tov, I'm surprised because this deranged guy comes in, starts screaming, you're so insulted. He says, what are you talking about? Did you hear what he said? He said, I do have what to fix. I do have what to fix in my neshama, in my heart. I'm just not thinking. I have to do tshuva. I have to make a cheshbon and nefesh. So the Talda said, he said that? He's talking about fixing things. No, but everything is hashgacha pratis. He's talking to me in Shemayim. I have to see. This is one of the reasons why I cannot get rid of my car for the sake of tshuva. I turn on my engine, service engine soon. And right away I start thinking what the Baal Shem Tov said, I have to change my life. I can't do without this Mesilsi Sharm, sefer. So they say that the Taldas Yaakov Yosef walked out afterwards because he couldn't accept it. That just because this guy said it, that means everything is hashgacha. So he said that somebody passed by, this like Kazakh, and he said to him, it's a bundle of hay or a huge big stack of something fell off his wagon. He said, Zhid, pick it up. So he tried. He said, I can't. Zhid, pick it up. He says, I can't. He went down. He says, so what happened was right before he left, he told the Baal Shem Tov, I'm leaving. So the Baal Shem Tov said, why? He said, because I can't believe that whatever this guy says means it's a simon Hashemayim. So the Baal Shem Tov told him, you could believe it. You don't want to. And he told it to him 3 times. You could believe it. You don't want to. He says, okay, goodbye. So now this Kazakh is yelling at him, pick it up. He says, I can't pick it up. So the Kazakh grabs him, throws him up against the tree, and says, you could. You don't want to. So he got the message, and he went back to the Baal Shem Tov. So Ma Yasa Adam B'Yamus Yichyes Atzmai. That's it. So Alexander sees he's not getting anywhere. That his brownie points aren't going up. His popularity contest is not going to go up. So he tells them, okay, I'm finished with you. I'm off. He says, where are you off? He's going to a certain country. And in order to go to that country, he has to pass what the Gemara refers to as the Harei HaChoshech, the mountains of darkness. But apparently there's no sunlight there whatsoever. Is this a reference to some type of Gehenna down here in this world? What a different minyanim in the Mefarshim. So he said, how do I get there? You guys are so smart. So they told him, they said, take a certain kind of donkey that'll go, needs very little light, walk through even the darkness, and tie ropes. So on the way back, you'll be able to follow the ropes. So what they were trying to tell him was that don't think you can conquer the world. You're going to have to come back to square one. Lamaisa, so he travels, and he comes to a city that has only women. Comes to an Ir Shekuloi Noshe. That's what he comes to. How could you have a city with only women? So the Maral says there were some few men, but they were bottle. He orders them to bring him bread. So they bring him gold bread. He says, I can't eat this. They said, well, we figure regular bread you have. If you're coming here, it's probably for your gold bread. So right away he sees, I'm in trouble with these people. So Chaim Shmulevitz says, Amar de Gavart. They meant to say to him like this. Listen, you conquered the whole world. You need this Harei HaChoshech mountain over here. You need our country also. So apparently whatever you have is not enough. So for you, gold is bread. In other words, just like a person needs bread every single day, you need more gold every single day. So you're never going to be satisfied. That's what they meant to say to him. Okay, so he tells them, listen, ready for war? So the ladies say to him, listen, Alexander, you're in big trouble now. He says, why? He says, if you kill us, what are people going to say? Destroy the whole country of women? And if we kill you, what are people going to say? Women killed you? So you're stuck. And he was stuck. And it was actually the first time that Alexander was stuck. That he had no answer. That it was a catch-22. He was not used to being stuck. He always had a way with his philosophy, with his money, with his power. You can get out of anything. All of a sudden, he's faced a situation where there's no answer. So he turns around. Again, this is a Goddess Chazal. We don't understand 100% what it means, but he comes to some type of a well. And he's washing his herring over there, washing off the salt, and he feels a reyach toiv, like a reyach of Gan Eden that he never felt before in his life. It says, Yafa shah achas, v'koyres ruach shel olam haba, better 1 hour of the sweet fragrance of olam haba is more so than all of the tanugim, all of the pleasures in this world combined. So the Chavetz Chaim says, we're talking about koyres ruach shel olam haba. Mashal Lamar Davidomi, you walk by the bakery Thursday night and you smell those ragalach Tam Gan Eden. We're not even talking about eating the ragalach. He says you can't even compare olam haba proper to Olam Hazeh. It's not even a dimyan. It doesn't connect. But even standing outside of Olam Haba and getting a whip of fresh air from Olam Haba, even that is more pleasurable than all the taibas down here in this world. So he gets a whip of that fresh air. The Rabbeinu Gershom has a girsa that the fish actually became alive. That he felt a ruach. The dead fish became alive. So this got him nervous when his herring all of a sudden started talking. As we know, that has happened before in the course of history. So it could be, right? We're not going to get into that now. But, so he feels this is the Reyach of Gan Eden. This is Gan Eden over here. There is a Gan Eden Atachten. Well, I don't know what this means, but there is a Pesach. The Gemara talks about a Pesach to Gehenim down here in this world, and the Gemara says there's a Pesach to Gan Eden Atachten down here in this world. The father used to share with me from the Balatanya. He says, well, who gets the Gan Eden Ha'elyon? Who gets the Gan Eden Atachten? So the Balatanya said that for the Etzem Mitzvah, that entitles you to a ticket to the Arthur Ashe Stadium, to Gan Eden Atachten. He said for the Simcha Shel Mitzvah, the joy that you have when you do the mitzvah, for that you get Gan Eden Elyon. And that's what the Chassam Sofer says, Zahir b'mitzvah kala. Be careful with an easy mitzvah. Because there's no such thing as she'enat yedei matan scharin shel mitzvahs. Because a guy does the easiest mitzvah in the world, and he does it with a smile, he feels, wow, I can do this mitzvah. He says that is worth 1,000 times more than the more chomerdik mitzvah that he does with a, got to do it. Got no choice. So you don't know the matan scharin shel mitzvahs. Anyway, so Alexander is by the Shar of Gan Eden, and he's not having a good day politically here, and he wants to go into Gan Eden, and they lock the door. He says, let me in, I'm Alexander the Great. They said, not up here, you're not. You're just plain Alexander. They said, Zeh Hashal Hashem Tzadikim Yavoy Yavoy. So he said, listen, I'm Fart Alexander, give me something else, give me a souvenir. So they gave him, some say, the Gemara says, the Machlokes had to touch the word in the Gemara. Some that Rishonim learned, they gave him a skull. Some say they gave him an eyeball. Talking about that Bacher of Nebuch that was trying to get through that first night with his Basherta, they say that once there was a Bacher sitting there, and no conversation, every once in a while, he has like the eyeball of a fish and he pops it. And afterwards, she said, I think he's a little strange. So, father go back to Schachter and called the boy. He said, are you out of your mind? What were you doing? He said he went like to his coach, his mashgiach, whatever, before. He says, what do? Do you look? You don't look? So he said, you don't look. From time to time, you cast an eye, he said. So that's what he did. All right, so they gave Alexander an eye. And he puts it, Mashal learns was some type of a diamond, whatever. So anyway, he puts all of his gold and silver. I guess he carried around all of his gold and silver with him in his backpack. He puts all of his gold and silver on a scale. He puts the eye on the scale. The eye is heavier. So now this eye from Gan Eden is heavier than all of his gold and silver. And he's not very happy about this. So he says, what's going on over here? So they tell him that's because the eye in this world, anyone that goes around, whatever you see, you want to have, you'll never be happy. Somebody else's will always be better than yours. You're never going to be happy in your life. He said, how do you know what you're saying is true? They said, cover it with some dust. They covered it with some dust, the eye, and all of a sudden his gold went up on the scale. So the Mashah says, look, Gan Eden is a point of situation. What makes Gan Eden is you're happy with what you have. You realize in Gan Eden that what I had down here on this world was exactly what I was supposed to have. And if I would have had a mashu more, it would have not been good. That's the ultimate happiness. No longer the time that I would have, I could have, if only I would have, I should have. No more. It says that a bunch of Talmidim, one of the Talmidim of Hashem went up there, a bunch of Neshamas said, Rabbi Shalom, we keep getting shipped down to this world because we always blow something else. Give us one thing, if we do this right, we don't have to come back down to this world anymore. So they gave it to them, they said, go through your whole life without saying the word if. If only I would have taken that job. If only I would have done that shit. No ifs. Wherever you are, that's where you are. Pick it up and go weiter with it. There's some of the Svarim bring on this Gemara that's why Le'aleinu v'le'alechem, by a mess, there's an inyan of closing the eyes of the mess. Because Kolzman, his eyes are open down here in this world, he cannot appreciate the full Olam Haba. That Olam Haba is a world that's different. So, now, I heard a Murdik of Shat today, Grada. L'maisa, why was he Zoicha to see Gan Eden? L'maisa, he was Zoicha to be Margish some Nekuda of Gan Eden. And the answer is, because he was Zoicha to be stuck. The mighty Alexander was Zoicha to be in a daga where these women told him, there's nothing you can do. It's lose-lose for you. and he acknowledged, you know something? They're right, there's nothing I can do. I can't kill them. If they kill me, it's lose-lose. When a person is makir, I need you, there's nothing I can do, at that moment, you begin to be margish to the Gan Eden, if you're willing to do it. Okay? So, Lamaisa, Alexander goes home. He does not have a very good life afterwards. First of all, he was poisoned. Never really recovered from that. His generals took over afterwards. So apparently he wasn't even his own children. So all of his wealth and all of everything else is gone. Okay? So Alexander, after all of his wealth and all of his power, wasn't zeicher to see much nachas. Right? That's without knowing that his great-grandchildren are going to be thrown out of the Eurozone in Greece, wherever that's happening. So the idea is that we have to accept who we are. You know, you try to be who you're not. What they say that this Hasidic person, he goes, you know, no, I shouldn't say Hasidic person. A person that was dressed like a Hasidic person, or maybe grew up in the culture. He's obviously not a Hasidic person, because if he was Hasidic, he would have different hashkafas. But so you know, he wants to shed off his past life. Wants to go into Afkeiris. So he learns how to speak English, and he goes into a bar, and he says, a martini. So the guy says, dry? He says, no, just one. I don't need dry. Right? The other part is he says, I want vodka on the rocks, but no ice, please. No ice. I don't want. Okay. We try to be who you're not, then you're not that, then you're not him. The Kotzker Rebbe once said like this. He says, if you are you, and I am I, then you are you, and I am I. He said, if you are me, and I am you, you're not me, and I'm not you. Okay? If we are who we are, that within itself is the Pesach of Olam Haba. Sefer V'Harav, no, it brings an interesting shaila there. It says that there was a minyan davening, that's Yisrael, you know, they duchen every single day. And there was this fellow, one kohen. They were calling him from minyan to minyan, and he was the only kohen around, and he wasn't very, you know, he had enough. You know, don't do him. No berachas kind of. And he walks out, and he's smoking. Then by Kriyas Torah he comes back in, and the Gabi says kohen. He starts walking to the bima. So the Rav says, no, ain't kan kohen. Hey, hello, you weren't here by duchening, so you're not here now. So afterwards he asked the Shaila whether he handled it correctly. So he quotes over there, I think, a similar story. I think he said from the Chassan Sefer, who was the son-in-law of the Chassan Sefer. And he said that this Kayin violated his V'kidashtoi. He violated, in other words, he's talking out a Kayin, whether he should have been so sarcastic or not. But Mi'ikr Dedina, who are you really supposed to call up to the beam to the Amid first, to the Sefer Torah? Really, the halach is that a Talmud Chacham comes before a Kayin, Amaretz. The only reason we stick to a kayin, we don't start herring people, is because it would lead to a lot of machlokes. Are you a Talmud Chacham? Are you you're the Amaris, you're the kayin. You come up, you know. We don't want to do that. But mi'ikr dedina, he's not acting like a kayin. So be honest, when we say you have to be who you are, there's two sides to that coin. There's one side to the coin is you have to be who you are. That if I have a kayach and every single person in this world does, then you have to use it to help others. And you're never allowed to say that you don't have a kayach that no one else has. It's both sides of the coin. What I say, the guy showed up from, I came to Eretz Yisrael for the first time, no one knew him, he came to live in a village, and the Gabi went over to him and said, Kayin? So he figured, why not? So he says, yeah, I'm a Kayin, you know. So the guy says, can you please walk out, we need the Aliyah, you know. You try to be who you're not, then you're nothing. So by Hasidim, there's this minig, that they have what's called a nitzvah tanz after the chuppah. We have a new chassan here, so we have to get all the manhagim down packed. And there's also a minig that there's a batchen who calls people up. Now, I don't know where this minig came from, but it became now a minig that you make a hesped on the person that you're calling up to dance with the gartel. And that has slowed down now because, quite frankly, I think people are getting a shtickle sick of it. But somebody once said, what's the difference in a hesped that said 3 o'clock in the morning? You know, the next uncle's coming up to dance the kala between a hesped that said by a levaya. They said, by hesped by a levaya, one person is laying and everyone's listening. The hesped 3 o'clock in the morning by the wedding, he says everyone's sleeping on a chair, and there's one guy that's talking about him. Yeah, and he goes to a shir every night. And he's listening. One guy's up, you know. As I've told you many times, this thing, a friend of mine was a batch and said, it actually happened to him. That somebody called him up. He said, you're doing a chasana by my daughter? He says, yeah, doing a chasana by your daughter. He goes, I don't want you to talk about me. Usually that means that he wants you to talk about him. He says, so we have to meet. Because why do we have to meet if I'm not talking about you? It's about my father-in-law. My father is very sensitive. I got to tell you what to say. I got to tell you all his miles. Okay? He says, so when should we meet to talk about your father-in-law? Sunday night? No, not Sunday night. Why not? He says, I run a gemach, and Sunday night I take care of the gemach. Many people come to me. Monday night? No, Monday night I give a minchas chinuch shir. No, can't do Monday. Do you want to meet Tuesday night? No. Tuesday night, I'm always thinking askonis. I help people that are in trouble. Okay. You want to meet Wednesday night? No. Wednesday night I give a shir or a chaim kodesh. No. Do you want to meet Thursday night? No, I do time for Shabbos Thursday night. He goes, when do you want to meet? He goes, we don't have to meet anymore. You got all the information you have. So it used to be that they would call up people one person at a time. Every uncle at a time. Then a wedding lasted 3 days. Really I think the Gemara talks about the original chas was chasav shashvina of all 7 days, but we don't manage. People go home in the middle. So now they do like a kol hanarim. They call up all the brothers-in-law from one side, all the brothers-in-law from the other side, everyone calls up. And it gets sometimes very complicated. Because you get the batching got to go really fast. And this brother-in-law, he's a mamish a Talmud Chacham, and this and people get so insulted. He said that and didn't say this, and said that and didn't say this. My good friend Yonis Schwartz, he once told me he does it this way. He says when they tell him all these brothers-in-law, and he's a Rosh HaKoil, and he gives a shir, and he does this, and he does that, he goes, I'll do it my way, okay? He takes all the names, he says, in his batching way. He says, we're now calling up Beryl and Yankel and Moshe and Zalman and Baruch and Shmerel and Gedalia. And you should know, amongst them, we have the greatest Masman, the greatest Baal Tzedakah, the greatest Askin, the greatest Ganef, the greatest Action, the greatest Oizvarf. Let everyone take what they want, and you all come up and dance. You make the arrows yourself. What do I got to connect the dots? You decide who's who, that's all. You all come up here. So I got to tell you, that when I married off my first kid, so I also told the Batman, please, no hesped, please. And he gave me this look. I said, what do you give me that look for? I really don't want it. He says, it's not nice. I'm going to do it for your mechut. I'm not going to do it for you. It's going to make you look like a balgaiva, that you're trying to show off you're an anav. Okay, so go ahead. So let me tell you all the things that I do, okay? And I'm waiting for him to start, and I said, I can't. There's 20 family members that are sleeping away over here, and I'm thinking what he's going to say about me. I can't believe, and then when he starts, so I had this mazel, this drunk, it's a true story, this drunk walked in with a bottle, and as he's talking, everyone is running after this drunk, holding him down, and I'm saying, Batcha, wait, don't you see no one's listening over here? They're by the drunk with the bottle. As soon as he finishes the whole hesped, they finish, and everyone sits down. And I'm like, okay, God, I got the message. I got it. Every once in a while, the Rebbeinu Shalom has to send you the message. I tell you, I was in a camp once, and there was this guy, whatever, they had Rechmanis on him, and he would come up and he would give these speeches. He would give by davening, whatever, and then everyone would come out to him. It was so beautiful, it was so nice, it was so geschmack. Then I gave a Pirkei Yavashi, and the same people were coming over to me. So beautiful, it was so nice, it was so geschmack. I was thinking, wait a second, right? Whoa, wait a second. I'll tell you what happened to me last Shabbos. It happens a lot of times. I tell a lot of stories to kids. Sometimes kids, they run around me as I'm talking. So I'm walking down the block. I don't want to say which block. And past there's a bunch of kids there, and I'm walking by, and I see one of the kids says, kid, look who's going there. So who? It's Fischel Schachter. Yeah. They all come running. Another kid goes, who? What? Fischel Schachter. He goes, so what? They all go back. And I'm like, whoa, where? He's right. So what? So I'm saying that no one really has COVID down here in this world. Okay, everyone gets what. Trust me, you don't have one for every drop of COVID on this world. There is an equal amount of bizyonis. Right? It doesn't work that way. Whether say the guy that's fighting for shishi, every has to get shishi, and the gabbai calls him up for a V, and he screams and he says at the gabbai, he says, that in my town, they gave a V to the biggest shlamazo. And he said, in this town also, he said. Okay. There's a sefer on a novel, I forgot, he brings it from a very strong makar. He says that it's one of the tzaddikim said there's an neshama that came up in Shemayim, and they said, mamish perfect. We have one taina on you. He goes, what is it? He says that once you were in a beis medrash, and they didn't give you the shlishi or the shishi, whatever it was, and you were stickle angry at the gabbai. He goes, so you have a choice. You can either go into Gehenna for a few seconds, or you go into the Beis HaMedrash, and they're going to call you up again, and your face is going to turn red, and everyone's going to see you're upset. And you're going to be embarrassed that everyone's going to see you're upset. You didn't get that aliyah. So he figured it sounds better than Gehenna. So he went in, and 2 seconds he came out, he said, I'll take the Gehenna. He says, the busha that we're going to have up there, So a fellow told me about he had a shaila, Choshen Mishpat shaila, with a lot of money on the line, and he went to his Rav, and the Rav told him a Ma'ir de Kazach. He said, I got to tell you that al pi halacha, you're right. You don't have to pay the guy back. Okay? Well, you have to listen to halacha. But the Rav added something. He said, it's going to be a big chilul Hashem and people aren't going to understand it. He just told me al pi halacha, I don't have to pay him back. So he says, the Rav said, I got to tell you, al pi halacha, you don't have to pay him back. But whether you pay him back or not depends, and these are the words that he said, how important is a Kadosh Baruch Hu in your life? Whoa. He said he wound up paying the guy back. And I think that, 45,000 people were sitting in the stadium and there was a dais. But the dais is the 45,000 people. Because each and every one of us, has to make a cheshbon, how important is the Kadosh Baruch Hu in our life. We'll all have our dais and what we have to filter and don't have to filter, and he said this and he said that, and there's a contradiction. You could have tinus from today to tomorrow. But the bottom line is, it's as if they're asking every single yid in this universe that we are at a threshold now where everyone has to make a decision. How important is the Kadosh Baruch Hu in your life that you're willing to do something that hurts? I once said there was a famous interviewer, political interviewer, I don't want to say his name, but they once interviewed the interviewer. And he said, what was like your most frustrating moment, or like ironic moment? And you interviewed political candidates for years and years. So he said he remembers once there were it was a high power race for Senate in some state. And he asked both of them, he said, I'm going to ask you one last question, okay? What is it you can tell me that you stand for, that you know is politically not what people want to hear, but you're going to say it because you know it's right? So one of them said, probably because they all had their closing statements written, well, I'm for world peace, and I'm for stamping out hunger, and I'm for, everyone. The other guy said, that's what each one said, right? They didn't hear the question. What is it that we are willing to do, okay, for the sake of the Rabbeinu Shalom? So we're going to read this Shabbos, the Yuchaneka, that Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to give us the greatest gift in the world. You know what the greatest gift in the world is? The gift of chen, that we find favor in the eyes of people. And we say it every single day. We daven v'sitneinu hayayim l'chein u'l'chesed l'fanecha. So Rav Fischel Abramsky asked, what do you mean? We're davening to Hashem should find favor in my eyes? I'm going to Hashem, Hashem, please, like me! What does that mean? So he said, Pshat is, you have to do the things that generate chen. And a Kadosh Baruch Hu will find favor in your eyes. And the Gemara says that there are 3 different types of chen. There's chen isha al baila, an appreciation that a woman has for her husband. There's chen makom al yoshvav, a person has a certain place, certain appreciation for his own bed, his own home. Chen mekach al lakcha. There's a certain appreciation you have for something that you purchased. The halach is once a person bought something already and there's no refund, don't tell him, you could have gotten it cheaper someplace else. That's lashon hara. He has it, it's something that he has. So Rav Fischel Abramsky explains a moedik yesod. He said, in order to have this chen, in order for a person to appreciate his spouse, in order for a person to appreciate the place that he lives, in order for a person to appreciate this is what I bought, this is what I purchased, this is what I have for right now, you have to have a certain sense of bittul. You have to have a certain sense of saying, this is my life. It may not be perfect, but for me it's just right. Thank you, Hashem. And when you do that, the Rabbeinu Shalom loves you more than anything else. I told you the Chazayin Ish once told a chassan and a kala. He said to the kala, you were told that your chassan is the best bach in all of Eretz Yisrael. And he told the chassan, you were told that your kala is the most gelungana girl in all of Eretz Yisrael. The Eibishter should help. You should continue to fool yourselves for the rest of your life. I don't have to be too smart. What I have is mine. Let me tell you, this is Rabbi Fischel Abramsky. I read a story in the Elaine L'Shabeach when he was Rav in London. And I want to just give you who he was. I mean, he withstood Siberia. He was tough like nails. He mamish represented Kavod HaTorah. He was the one who went as a character witness for somebody in London. And he was determined that this guy get out. And he was mincing no words. And the judge said, who are you exactly? He said, I am the chief rabbi and the greatest scholar in all of London. And the judge said, what about humility? He said, I can't, I'm under oath, he said. I gotta tell you the truth, man. He said the same person, somebody once came to pick him up. Every second was so precious. and he has his wife in his older years. His wife was crippled and old, and he was sitting there for over an hour schmoozing. Then he went to try to get his sefer printed on the bus, and he missed the bus, and he went here and he tried to get a coffee, and he couldn't get the coffee, and his shoelace and a mamish. His wife wasn't able to talk. He ploppled away. This is a person that didn't waste a millisecond. They said, what's shot in that? He said, she was with me my whole life. She stood behind me. And now she's sick and she can't talk, and she's in a wheelchair. She's in the house. This is her whole life. Did I tell her exactly what's going on in my day? This is my first achrayus. Before anything else. There's no stira between the first comment and the second comment. It's the aside of bittul. It's a very important thing, Rabbi says. Getting late. I want to wrap it up. A lot of people think that in order for their spouse to respect them, or for the children to respect them, you got to be honored by a dinner. You got to write a book. I got to be a something for my wife and kids. There was a fellow by the name of Nachum Schachter. I shouldn't say fellow, it was a tzaddik Nizgav. He built Mei Yesharim. I'm not going to go into the whole story now. But what he did to get Mei Yesharim in those days under the Turks, dressed up like an Arab, purchased properties, risked his life, took on the Tsar, took on everything. And he made the whole Mei Yesharim. And when the Jews were thrown out of the old city in 1948, they had where to go. Now he was an Esrig Seicher. And they say a famous story that one of his grandchildren once came to him. In the middle, he was running Erev Yom Kippur to purchase. He wanted to buy the Russian compound. That's really what he wanted. He almost did it. And he was in the middle of negotiations. He had to chop right before Yom Kippur. And this little kid came running and said, Zaidi, could you see my esrig? All of Klal Yisrael, I can't now. So the first day, Sukkot, 5 o'clock in the morning. I don't even know if it was an Anikel. It could be it was a total stranger or a neighbor. Knock on the door, 5 o'clock. He goes, Nachum, what's happening? He goes, I want to see the esrig now. And the little kid took out his esrig, and he oohed and awed. I said, I want to ask you something. He built all of Mei Yesharim. Probably, I don't know how many people in Mei Yesharim know his name. All right? But that little kid, when he grew up afterwards, and he was a father of children, he thought about his father or grandfather. He thought about the couple of minutes he looked at his esrig. Trust me. That, in a sense, becomes more important than anything else. There's a story in the Elena L'Shadeach where someone got up in the middle of the night, in Auschwitz. A bunch of kids were there, and he had to go to the bathroom, and he couldn't find his cap. It was missing. So he figured he took the cap off another boy and put it on. He didn't want to walk outside without the cap. He didn't want to walk without a yarmulke. And then he fell asleep in the bathroom where he fainted, never from hunger and disease. When he came back, he realized what happened. They came in the middle of the night amongst the kids, and they made a selection. And the way they did the selection is the doctor, any kid that was slated for the gas chamber, the doctor took off his cap. That's where his cap went. And because he took the cap off this other boy was sent to the gas chamber. So he came and said, I killed him. He said, I killed him. So the Rav told him, listen, what happened, no one is responsible for what happened under those circumstances. He says, I can't take any achrayus. L'maisa, God did it this way, that I killed him. He said, it depends what you do with that. If it's guilt, you're going to go around the whole life saying you killed someone, that's avodah zarah. You want to take your life and say, okay, it happened. It wasn't my fault, but it happened this way. And therefore, I have to go around teaching people not to embarrass others, which is giving life. Help people build families, pru revu. Be magadol yosim in your house. Be toimach tamid chachamim. Fine. It depends what you do with the emotion. If you take that emotion and say, I'm going to build with it, it's the most beautiful thing in the world. If you take that emotion and say, forget it, I killed someone, then it's the Yetzer Hara. And that's how we have to view the mistakes in our life. Are you going to take it and build with it, correct it? Then it's the Yetzer Tov. If not, it's the Yetzer Hara. Do you know that the Rambam paskins that suppose Bezin's Mekadosh the Chodesh on a certain day, 20 days later the Edom come was a mistake, different Edom come. You're not supposed to do it. You're supposed to try to convince the Edom. But if you have no choice, Bezin could correct it 20 days later. You know what that means? That imagine you were told now, sorry guys, Shuas was on the wrong day. Okay, we got to do it all over again. All right, cheesecake and being up at night, and the flowers on the street again. All right, so I once read from a Batchen. He's trying to picture. Imagine you saw the videos of the wedding that were going backwards. Okay, so how does the whole thing go? So you start out with the mitzvah dance, and then benching, then everyone's dancing the other way. Then also you see the photographer saying like something, people are smiling, stop smiling, right? Then you see by the shmorg, everyone's putting their food back in. Everyone's coming to their food, putting it back in, right? And then they takes the ring off the kala's finger, and the chas and kala drive off in different directions. There are people that dismantle their lives. Okay, we don't have a choice. You know those signs by the toll booth? No backing up. There's no backing up. Life is where I am right now. So Parshas Naso is the longest Sedra, 176 psukim. Okay, says the Chassam Sofer, because after Shavuos, you take on Parshas Naso. That's what you got to do. Right? The entire Parsha really has one thread. It's late. I want to run through it quickly. Remember, you can't skip. Right? You got to read every single pasuk. Long Sedra, it's the dream of every Gabbai, because you got a lot of schnoddering. Schnoddering means when people come up for aliyahs and they give money. Some people give money. Some people say, ani yitein matana l'beis hamedrash. Somebody once asked me, what's a matana? So, I don't know, whatever you want to give. He said, if I put a sefer back into the Svarim Shank, is that a matana to the beis medrash? I said, why don't you take out a sefer? Maybe that's a bigger matana than the beis medrash, right? I remember I was in a camp once, so one of the kids that worked in the like construction part of the camp, he came by, and he, like in the beis medrash, he opens up a Gemara and he says, every time I come into the beis medrash, you guys are learning Sukkah, the third Perek. I said, listen, we have a 3-year cycle. You know what that means? The last time you were in the beis medrash was 3 years ago and opened the sefer. Right? So some people, instead of giving a matana, what do they say? They say tzivul levarcha. Right? The Gabbai says, bench him, because so-and-so said you should bench them. Said you should bench them. Right? Some people say $100, some people say $180, some people say 18 times tzivul levarcha, whatever it is. All right, so Parshas Naso is the 35th Sedra. You know what it means? It's the 35th Sedra. It's halfway through your life. At this point, it's too late really to change who I married. It's too late to change my career. Parshas Naso is, hey, pal, who you are is who God wants you to be. Okay? And the more you make the people around you feel good about it and act like a mensch, the more the Rabbi Shalom loves you. So Kahas was the most chashuv of the 3 brothers. Kahas gets the least press. He's in Parshas Bamidbar. It starts with Gershon, who's not carrying the Kodesh HaKadoshim. And then goes to Merari, who doesn't even get the word Nasai. Says the Orach Chaim HaKadosh is to let you know that Rabbi Hashem wants everyone who they are, who it has to be. And it keeps on going until where? It keeps on going until the Nesiim. Right? So we all know it's really not so hard for Bal Kairis because you're repeating the same thing 12 times. And why are you repeating the same thing 12 times? Because all the Nesiim got together and they said, guess what? We're not going to outdo each other. We're all going to bring the same carbon. And the Rabbi Hashem says, I love you. Every single one is separate. I read a report. There was a Brinks robbery someplace. So they had a new security device. The Ganavim stole the cash. And when they opened up the box, if it's opened up unauthorized, there's this glue that shoots out, and all of the $100 bills are glued together. So like nothing you can do with it. What do you do with 1,000 $100 bills? They're glued together. It starts ripping. If we each try to rob, we're all glued in a fight, and no one gets anywhere. And if we do things, this is yours, this is mine, the Rebbeinu Shem says, I love you. You made up not to outdo your friend. You're all special. The way we become special is not by being famous. The way we become special is by being who we are. So Rav Pam said, Amari the Gevart. Rav Pam said that the Nesiim, they brought a carbon on Shabbos. You never find the Yachid should bring a carbon on Shabbos. Only a Tzibur does. They brought Ketores. You never find the Yachid should bring Ketores. You know why? Because the Rebbeinu Shem says when 2 people make up, I'm not going to try to outdo you. You're not going to try to outdo me. We're each going to be who we are and be happy with each other. Hashem says that's the whole tzibur. Then you are, in my eyes, chashiv like the tzibur. Rav, the Chazayin Ish, once was an emergency meeting. Mamish, all of Klal Yisrael depended on it. And the Askarim are waiting. No. The Chazayin Ish, who's he talking to? He's talking to 2 people. They go inside, like, Rebbe. A man and a lady are sitting, a middle-aged man and a lady are sitting there. And one of them takes out a button. Should we buy this? No. The other one takes out a spool of thread. Should we buy this? Yeah. Like, Rebbe, we got this meeting, the army, the prime minister, what are you doing? He says, this is a couple that came after the war. They have no family. And I pushed them. They should have the courage to invest in a business. They have a little store that sells yarn and different things, but they're very scared to buy things on their own. So they come to me once a week, and we sit down, and I look at things, and I try to use his Ruach HaKodesh, but I try to use to tell them what to buy or not. He said, that's more important than the world. He said, this is the world. Who you are and what you can give to everyone else. And if you do that, Parshas Naso is not long at all. It's the Parsha that gives us all a sense of simcha, a sense of joy. It's the Parasha that takes each and every one of us and unglues the $100 bills that makes each neshama shine.